sorry, I feel like I'm coming into this with kind of hostile vibes. We'll try to get in the Christmas spirit, but the Nesta slander that happens in this book hurts my feelings and makes me a little cranky. Hi, and welcome back to my ACOTAR recap series. I'm so excited to be talking about A Court of Frost and Starlight with you, the ACOTAR Christmas book. This book was the only book in the series that I had yet to read when I began this recap. This is actually my first reading experience of this book because I heard nothing happened in it. And as someone who just recently finished it, I can concur. Nothing does really happen in it. You can skip this book. If you don't want to read it, you don't have to. I was saving it for a rainy day because I was like, we don't have any Sarah J. Maas books on the horizon. I'm going to save this one. And I think I was also just so eager to get into Nesta's book that I was like, I don't have time for this Christmas special, I don't know why I didn't read it initially, but I've read it now. And I can tell you really not much happens, but it's a fun little time. It's Christmas in Night Court, essentially. It's Solstice, which is Feyre's birthday, but also they have all the Christmas traditions, to the point where they're decorating with evergreen pines. I don't think they have a Christmas tree, which is really a shame, but they do have wreaths and boughs of holly, and they exchange presents and make cookies. So the vibes are there. And I thought, what better time to talk about it than right after Thanksgiving? We are officially in the Christmas season. It's December. It is finally snowed in Colorado. Thank goodness. Let's jump right into this little tale. This tale is told from a variety of perspectives. Each chapter, we kind of switch POVs. Sarah J. Maas is easing us into the transition of A Court of Silver Flames, which is told from Nesta and Cassian's perspective. So we are getting lots of perspectives. We still get a lot of time with Feyre. I would still say she's the main character of this book, but we get to dip into a couple other heads as well. We start with Miss Feyre, though. It's the first snow of the winter. How exciting. And Rhys is gone from bed when she wakes up this morning. She's chilling at the breakfast table now. And she's remembering when she was a starving girlie less than 2 years ago. Yeah, it's a little less than 2 years since Feyre started this whole book series. And I want you to keep that in your brain as we get to the end of the book and some of the decisions and choices that she makes and her husband supports. Because I really have some thoughts. This book actually filled me with rage at points. I cried. I was filled with rage, and yet nothing much happened. So I'm excited to explore that emotional journey with you. Anyway, and she is trying to dial up Rhys on the old mate bond phone. She's like, "Hey, bestie, where are you?" And there's nothing there. And she's like, "That's normal." So he must be outside of Valaris, obviously, and outside of the Night Court. Sometimes it's hard to reach him when he's in another place. And I don't remember that happening. I remember it being slightly more difficult upon distance for her to contact Rhys, but she could still contact him even when she was in Spring Court. So this is frightening to me. She seems cool with that. We have Novella and Serdwin, the shadow wraiths, and they're already working on lunch while Feyre is washing her breakfast dishes. It seems they're the only two servants that they have in the townhouse, which is where they are currently living. They have I don't remember how big this townhouse is. It's pretty large. We will see Feyre complain repeatedly about the townhouse and how it's too small for all of their crap. But because they need a bigger place. But I do think it's we have a bedroom for Rhys and Feyre. We have a bedroom for Elaine. We have a bedroom for Nesta, even though she's not using it. We have a bedroom for Mor. We have a bedroom for the boys. And then we have an attic bedroom. I think it's a 6-bedroom house. Okay. Tiny, petite. She barely has any space. They were living in a 1-room cottage where she was sleeping in the same bed as all of her sisters. All 2 of them, but still, both of her sisters. It seems we've jumped to tiny house syndrome a little too quickly, but okay, whatever. The gardens are already prepped for the winter. Elaine obviously has tended to the gardens, made sure they're all ready for the first frost. And Feyre's chatting with the shadow wraiths about what the customs are in the Night Court for Solstice. It's, like I explained, essentially Christmas. There's presents, there's food, there's music, there's decorating with evergreen trees and lights. Feyre is really excited about the prospect of buying everyone gifts. Also excited about the fact that there is not really a religious sort of element for the Night Court in Solstice. You can go to the temple if you want, but you don't have to. Then she heads up to the bedroom she's sharing with Rhys, and she notes that it's getting crowded with all of their collective crap, and they could keep it in a shadow realm, the realm between realms, where Rhys goes and stores crap. His void, I assume, that's where the Janets live, if you watch The Good Place, my favorite television show. But they choose not to. So, really, they don't have a storage issue because they have infinite storage in the void. But, they want to be able to look at their stuff. like, it's fine if you want to move to a bigger house. I think that is totally reasonable. You are like the king and queen of this. You should have a place where you can, like, you have the House of Wind, obviously. You have this townhouse. But, like, if you want another house, that's fine. I'm not going to begrudge you that. But let's stop pretending that you need another house. Because that's just silly. You want one. And that's okay. You're allowed to want things. But she's pretending she, like, really needs one because they don't have a place to store all their knives. Sorry, I, like, feel like I'm coming into this with, like, kind of hostile vibes. We'll try to get in the Christmas spirit, but the Nesta slander that happens in this book hurts my feelings and makes me a little cranky. Elaine is still living with them in the townhouse, but Nesta has gotten herself her own apartment in the city, and Lucien has got an apartment in the city that he uses when he's in town. But he's been kind of gone a lot. He went to the spring court and then returned without explanation, but with a black eye and a split lip. Like, we don't exactly know what's happening between Lucien and Tamlin, but, like, he's clearly trying to mend things between them, and he's just kind of, like, gone a lot, doing whatever. But Feyre is, like, very invested in the Lucien-Elaine relationship. Townhouse is just, like, feeling a little too small these days, but regardless, they want to celebrate the solstice there and not a House of Wind. House of Wind does feel, like, quite cold. Feyre is just, like, not a big fan of House of Wind. It's not her vibe. And so even though the townhouse is small, they want to celebrate the solstice there. Feyre is doing some work. She's doing some paperwork. She's got a whole stack of papers to go through. And she is like, maybe I should get myself a secretary to help her sort through it. And I think that's a great idea because as High Lady, she is, like, governing. She doesn't seem to do, like, much except, like, sit at this desk and complain about the amount of paperwork she has. But I do think it, like, makes sense for her to, like, get a secretary, get an assistant to help her with some of the, like, governing work. At this point, she's a 20-year-old lady. She'll turn 21 in the course of this book. I think it makes sense for them to have some assistants, have some, like, formal governing help. That does make sense. It does seem like that's a large part of your job as High Lady. So maybe you should get some help to sort through it. And then we learn that Rhys doesn't look over the budgets for their personal budgets because they're just too rich to worry about it. And I as soon as that was said, I said, oh, this is how people get embezzled from. They're like, we don't look at the money. We are too rich for that. We have somebody who takes care of that. What I've learned from every single, like, celebrity memoir is that you should always look over your own money. You should always look over your own money because the chances that someone is embezzling from you, it's, like, pretty high. Even if you, like, trust the people around you, just, like, keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it. Mistakes are made. People steal. I don't think you should just ignore that aspect of yourself. And I also am like, this is crazy. It is implied that this is, like, his personal budget, but I think also we get the implication that, like, the personal versus the Night Court's funds in general, I don't think there's, like, a super firm line, as there wouldn't be, as he's, like, High Lord. It's, like, kind of a monarchy sort of situation. And it does seem like one of his key responsibilities as High Lord of the Night Court would be, like, managing the court's budgets. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, I do think Rhys is bad at being High Lord. I do think Rhys is bad at being High Lord, and Feyre might even be worse at being High Lady, unfortunately. We also learned that Feyre is doing volunteer work to help with some of the societies that are working to help, like, rebuild and help everyone recover after the war. And I do want to say there is a lot of emphasis put on, like, Feyre's charity work and her donating in this, and I do think that's great. Like, I'm not anti-charity or donating, but I do think as the High Lady of the court, like, her probably the bigger thing she could do to help her people would be to, like, govern, like, set up systems as the government of this court to, like, help these people rather than, like, relying on you, like, going and volunteering. Like, I think both are important, and we'll, like, talk about Feyre kind of, like, establishes something that I actually think is great. But I, like, do think, like, we've lost track of the fact that they are the bosses here. And as the bosses, as the people in power, like, your efforts probably shouldn't begin and end with, like, volunteering for different charities. Like, your efforts probably should mostly involve, like, government assistance because you are the people in power. You are the government. Regardless, she is doing that. She has been so helpful. So helpful. But the other volunteers told her, just take Solstice off. Like, enjoy a little break for the holidays. I think probably they were, like, part of them was, like, wanting to give her a break. I'm sure she's, like, lovely and so helpful. But also I'm sure it's kind of annoying to have, like, the High Lady there. Like, sometimes you just want to complain. And you don't want your boss there. And she is kind of the boss of everyone. I think when Sarah was writing this book, she was probably thinking, like, Princess Diana vibes, like the British royal family. But the British royal family is a figurehead. Like, they don't actually have that much power in the UK. And so I think we can't be like, she is, like, Princess Diana going in and helping so many people. Because, like, girl, the way you could be helping people is, like, actually, like, setting up funds. They are the actual rulers of this place. Like, go govern. The best thing you could be doing for these people. Rhys finally responds after all this paperwork, letting her know that he's at the Illyrian war camp, and she couldn't reach him because Cassian was talking to him on the phone. Talking to him on the Rhys mental telephone. And so that's why they couldn't chat. Then we jump to Rhys's noggin and we see what's happening up at this Illyrian war camp. Rhys and Cassian are up in the mountains at the war camp. Cassian's in a bad mood. He showed up to deal with this program that they're trying to institute in which women are going to be allowed to train as Illyrian warriors, just like the men are. But the problem becomes they are still expected to do all of the same chores and child rearing, so they just have like an extra job now. This actually seems like a bad deal for all the girls who have been chosen to train in this program. And Devlin, who is like the boss man of this war camp, is like, well, right now the girls aren't training at all because they have all this extra work because of Solstice. And Cassian's like, well, we can cut their training back to 2 hours, but they still need to be like out there training. Maybe the boys could help with Solstice. And Devlin's like, absolutely not. The boys cannot help with Solstice. That's silly goofy. That's girl work. So no. Devlin keeps arguing with Cassian even after Rhys like declares it an order. He's like, you have to give them at least an hour and a half to train every day, which seems like, one, not enough, and two, actually, again, just like a burden on these women. Like, if we aren't taking away the work of child rearing and chores, now they just like have additional work. Also, Rhys talks about like a lot about how he like could just like rip into their minds and like force them to listen, but he doesn't want to be the kind of ruler who does that. And I like agree. I don't think that's a great leadership. I don't think that'd be a great leadership move to like force them to do something. But I also think there is a place in which like we could be negotiating. We could be like forging relationships and like creating an environment in which these guys like are more willing to listen. Like, why are we not being like, okay, what can we give you? Like, why are we not trying to like use our power that we have as like ruler of the Night Court to really try to like manipulate the situation a little bit more? He's like, you have to listen to me because I'm the boss of you. And Devlin's like, we don't want to. And Rhys is like, dang it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do then. What am I supposed to do? And he talks a lot about how like this is like very traditional and it's like hard for them to break away from tradition. But I just think we could be having better conversations here about like what we could do to like move forward in progress. And they don't have any extra men because they lost quite a few forces in the war. They don't have the extra like support to just like have men stationed out here to like force them to comply and to like make sure that this is constantly being respected. And so like they're kind of at a loss of what to do. After the two boys leave Lord Devlin and they're off by their own, Cassian also lets Rhys know that there has been a lot of dissension that has been rising up in the war camp, and Cassian is a little worried that Solstice is going to make it worse because they're going to be going back, gathering with their families. There's going to be time for like that sort of conversation to like just like brew and kind of fester in these groups. And Cassian offers to stay in the mountains to kind of oversee what's happening, make sure nothing too dramatic gets stirred up. But Rhys is like, no, like I want you home for Solstice. Like I want you to spend time with the family. And Rhys is like reflecting back on the fact that Cassian had very nearly died, like was very close to death twice in the like very past few months, and so he like really wants to celebrate the fact that they're all alive and together for this holiday. Also he like comments on the fact that something is going on between Nesta and Cassian, but like right now Nesta and Cassian aren't talking at all, and we learn that Nesta isn't really talking to anyone. Nesta is only talking to Feyre a couple times a month because she sort of has to, but besides that Nesta has really isolated herself in a big way. And then Cassian asks if both sisters will be at the celebration, so if we're gonna have all three Archereon girlies there. And Rhys confirms that they will be, even if he has to drag them there. And Rhys essentially just like thinks Nesta is the devil. That is the relationship between Nesta and Rhys. Rhys like thinks Nesta's the devil. He cannot forgive her for what he sees as like slights against her sister and the harm that he feels like she did to Feyre. And he just like hates her guts. And then Rhys is thinking about the fact that this is Feyre's 21st birthday. How exciting. She can drink legally now. And he's thinking about how young that is in comparison to his parents, who also had like an age gap measuring in the number of centuries. And he's thinking about the fact that his mother was miserable being with a man that was so much older, and like whether he's kind of put Feyre in a situation where she will be miserable later and kind of like worried about that. And then Cassian kind of like can see him fretting. He can see the emotional turmoil on his buddy's face. And Cassian says to him, Feyre chose this. And like, he's like, I'm also so jealous of you. He's like, these are the kind of love stories that you only hear about in stories. Like, this is magic, brother, and like, do not take it for granted. And then Rhys is like, what about you? Are you happy? And Cassian says, I'm getting there. Then we cut to Mr. Cassian himself, and he's flying in the mountains, the Illyrian mountains, after Rhys leaves, and he's thinking about all the spooky, ooky things that fly in the mountains, and I want to know if wyverns are up here. Is Braxis up here? Is Braxis's little brother up here? I want to know. I'm always on the hunt for wyverns. He's flying past Ramael, the sacred mountain, which you can't go to except during the Blood Rite. And I think this is like our first, or one of our first introductions to the Blood Rite, which is a major plot point of Silver Flames. And we get a little bit more about what that is. The Blood Rite is this thing in which all novices completed with their wings bound, no siphons, a spell restraining all magic, and no supplies beyond the clothes on your back. The goal was to make it to the summit of the mountain by the end of the week and touch the stone, the obstacles, the distance, the natural traps, and each other. And then he talks a little bit more about this like stone that is at the top of the mountain, and like no one knows how it got there. It's been there since before the Fae and even the humans were around, and it's described as like an onyx monolith, which like to me as a Surgeon Mass Throne of Glass reader makes me go, wordstone. Obviously, that's a wordstone. And also, like, I know we're getting an ACOTAR 6, and by no, I mean, like, I know the same things as the rest of you. I don't have insider information, but, like, I feel in my bones that we're getting an ACOTAR 6 announcement relatively soon. I think early spring. Probably not, like, this year, just because there's, like, not enough time for it to be relevant. But I do think we'll probably get one in the spring. I'm hoping the book will be out summer, maybe fall of 2026, and I like have my fingers and toes and elbows crossed for a guest appearance by my favorite blonde girl. My favorite blonde, I hope she makes a guest appearance. Fingers, toes, elbows, knees, all crossed for it. Cassian is on a little special field trip. He's headed to the war camp that he'd burnt to the ground because the way his mother had been treated at that war camp. He like wanted to bury her in Valaris, but her body had been thrown into the chasm. So this chasm in the mountains up here. And so he's essentially like going to his mother's grave, or the closest thing he has to it. And he thinks to himself that this project of training the women at these Illyrian war camps is like really important to him, because for him, it is something he's doing in honor of his mother. Because he knows what it was like for her to like not have access to fighting, to be put in this position in which she couldn't defend herself. And so he wants to make sure these women can fight and that they can defend themselves. And then he briefly thinks about Solstice and seeing Nesta for the first time. Back to Miss Feyre. Feyre's in the Rainbow doing some Solstice shopping when she has a little bit of a flashback to the attack that happened there. And she kind of is like taken fully back into this memory. And when she comes to, she doesn't like pass out or anything like dramatic, but she is kind of like not in her body for a second. When she comes back into herself, a bunch of people at the gallery are staring at her, and Feyre is like, as the High Lady, people like approach her all the time, and she like doesn't mind that. She's walking and she's thinking about how like the whole town is like super nice. No one here is like poor. She's like, except my sister somehow managed to find like the slums of Valaris, and that's where her apartment is. And I'd just like to say Nesta, who is getting her apartment covered by like Feyre and Rhys, is a budget conscious queenie. She's like, I'm going to make sure I live someplace that's not too expensive. How kind of her. And then we also learn that Feyre says, or thinks to herself, a few months ago I began donating a portion of my monthly salary. The idea of receiving such a thing was still utterly ludicrous to rebuilding the Rainbow and helping its artists, but the scars remained, both on these buildings and on their residents. And again, I would like to say, girlie, you are the government. Just give them money to rebuild. Like, you don't have to donate it. You can just, as the High Lady, say, okay, we are going to put a grant together. I don't know. You don't need to make it that formal with modern language, but like, here's money, rebuild. Like, you control the royal coffers. Just give them money. And then she goes into one of the galleries. She's chatting with one of the gallery owners on the street about some of the places that look vacant. And she explains that some of the people have moved and are like rebuilding, but like can't live there while the rebuilding is happening. And some are gone. Some aren't there to rebuild. And the gallery owner, who we learn is Racina, suggests that Feyre buys one of the studios to take over for her own artwork, like not as High Lady, but just as like a place for her as an artist. And then Racina says, we remember, you know, that you came for us that day. And then Racina invites her to join this group they have of painting. They like get together and gather and paint together, and she invites Feyre. And then Feyre heads on. It's starting to snow again. She's headed to the Palace of Jewels and Threads, and she's shopping around when she bumps into Mor. And Feyre makes a comment about how expensive something is, and Mor's like, why does it matter? You guys are like super rich, like Jeff Bezos rich. She doesn't say that last part, obviously. They do not have Amazon in Prithian, but that's kind of the implication. Feyre is shopping for Amren, obviously, because she deserves an extra big present because she did save all their butts this year, so she gets extra jewelry. And Feyre asks if Varian will be joining them, but Mor explains that Amren is like being cagey about it. She like asked if Varian, who is like Amren's boyfriend essentially, will be joining them, and Amren didn't give her a clear answer. Feyre finds the perfect gemstone to give to Amren. It looks like it has a flame inside, and Feyre asks Mor what she wants for Christmas, and Mor's like, I don't want anything. And then Feyre's like, is there anyone you want to bring to Solstice dinner? Mor doesn't really answer. She's kind of just like generally being like whiny about having to shop for presents for all of them because she's had to give them so many presents over the years. She's like, what is there left to give them? I've had to give them presents for like hundreds of solstices at this point. And they chat back and forth about what to get the boys, and Feyre then asks if Mor is going to visit Vivian in the winter court because for Solstice because they're friends. And Mor says, yeah, maybe their celebration lasts a full week, so like maybe after I do Solstice here, I will head over there. And then she talks about how like the winter court was like really closed off, but it is slowly opening up a little bit more, and kind of the like after effects of the war, and their celebrations are like really fun and exciting. So Mor's like, yeah, maybe I'll head there and see some of their celebrations and also visit her friend Vivian. And then Mor's like, I actually didn't come to talk to you about presents and do shopping with you. I actually came to tell you that we're headed to the Hewn city tonight. Mor, Rhys, and Feyre, they head every year right around Solstice just to kind of like check on them and make sure they're keeping things in line. And they're headed there tonight because Eris is supposed to be there. Feyre is in bed when Rhys gets home. She's taking a little midday nap, and I love that for her. She really should have used the afternoon to do more paperwork, but she takes a little nap instead, which is like, again, relatable, but like not becoming of a great high lady. Sorry, girl. And Feyre is like, maybe we should delay our trip to the Court of Nightmares. Rhys is looking exhausted after returning from his trip to the Illyrian mountains, but he's like, no, it's fine. And then Feyre's like, okay, but you need to eat something before we go. And because he hasn't eaten all day because he's been too busy. Feyre's like napping in the bed after shopping. And Rhys is like, wow, governing is hard. I have a lot of work to do. I also feel a little bit like Rhys is not great at like managing his time as High Lord. Again, I do think they need some assistance. I do think that's a good idea. Let's hire some secretaries because I think we can manage our schedules a little bit better. And like, I don't think necessarily busyness is equal to productivity or important. I don't know. Get an assistant. I think that's a great idea. We also learn a little bit about Feyre's first period. Great, thanks. I was wondering. Fae women only have periods twice a year, every 6 months, but it's extra painful and there's nothing the healers can do for them. Perfect. The healers in this world really care so little for women's health. They said, take real world, the lack of concern for women's health, double it. Let's double it and give it to the Fae women. Okay. Rhys had stayed with her the whole time. She had just like been laid up in bed, just kind of like in crippling pain. And truly the only thing the healers can do is like literally knock them unconscious. Feyre is already starting to like worry about her fertility, which seems like quite early. Like 21 would be a crazy time to be worried about your fertility as a human woman. As a Fae woman who lives to like 2000 or something, it seems like crazy early. Like we know that it's like much harder for a Fae woman to conceive, partly because it seems like they only have 2 periods a year. So like there's only 2 times per year that they're like fertile. But like still, girl, you have like so much time. Like, let's not stress about it yet. And Feyre had to give, like, the birds and the bees talk with her sisters, like, let them know about, like, the contraceptive potion and, like, what they should expect from their periods and all of that to both of her sisters. Elaine was embarrassed and Nesta was like, I don't care. And she's, like, really worried about what her sisters will have to endure when it comes time for their periods because we are coming up on about 6 months since they were both made. And so, like, probably it'll be coming any time now. And then she starts thinking about Lucien and Elaine and what their deal is and whether he's coming to Solstice. And Rhys is still kind of mad at Lucien and the way he treated Feyre both under the mountain and when she went back to Spring Court after that. And Feyre is like, so Rhys is mad at them. Rhys is also mad at Nesta. Feyre says to him, you can barely talk to Nesta, yet Elaine you talk to nicely. If you blame one, you have to blame the other. And Rhys says, no, I don't. Elaine is Elaine. Nesta is Illyrian. I mean that as a compliment, but she's an Illyrian at heart, so there's no excuse for her behavior. Okay, that's insane behavior. Also, if you're out there and you hate Nesta and you like Elaine, take it from Feyre's mouth. If you hate one, you have to hate the other. Rules are rules. Feyre was the one that was traumatized, so she gets to make the rules. And Feyre's like, I think she more than made up for it this summer, Rhys. Like, Nesta really did work hard and do like a lot to help them in the war efforts. And Elaine did. Let's hear it. Almost nothing. Except get kidnapped that one time. Bless her sweetheart. Like, I love Elaine. I think she's so sweet. I'm excited for her book. I think she's a sweet, sad girl. I love that she loves to garden. But, like, I guess she did kill the King of Highburn. Gotta give her that one. Anyway, Rhys says, I cannot forgive the one who made you suffer. I cannot forgive anyone who made you suffer, except Elain. He can forgive Elain. And Feyre said, they're my family. You have to forgive Nesta at some point. And Rhys says, should that be my solstice gift to you? Forgiving Nesta for letting her 14-year-old sister go into the woods? I'm going to say it. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Where is the Papa Archereon slander? I understand that he was just killed. Okay, we're feeling a little soft and tender about Papa Archereon right now. But, like, Nesta, I think, was... Feyre was 14. I believe that makes Nesta 17. She's not the boss. Turns out she's not the boss of the house. Like, their father was still there. Still walking around. Well, he wasn't walking. He did have to, like, kind of hobble around. But, regardless, why isn't he getting blamed for this? Like, he definitely had some say over whether his children went into the woods. More than Nesta did. What about Elain? Elain was only like a year younger than Nesta. I need more Elain slander. I need more Papa Archereon slander. And I need substantially less Nesta slander. This book is like half Nesta slander. And I will not stand for it. Feyre talks about how she tells Rhys about how she went to the Rainbow today and how she was invited into this painting group. And she says she feels really conflicted about taking this time to paint while people are still recovering from the war and don't have homes, which I totally understand. But I also, as someone who has just been hating on Rhys and Feyre for their lack of governing, I do think it would be a good idea for Feyre to have a hobby. And probably one such as painting, which is going to be therapeutic and good for her. I actually think this is a great idea if I had to give advice. Rhys also really encourages her to pursue this, and then things start getting steamy, but Mor comes in and breaks it up, reminding them that they need to leave for the Court of Nightmares ASAP. And then we switch to Miss Morrigan's head. They're headed to the Hewn city, which is all decorated for Christmas, but in an evil way. Okay, that's what we're told. It's decorated for Christmas, but it's still got evil vibes. Kier is waiting for them alongside Eris when they arrive, and Mor is sent into a flashback from the time when she was left for dead on the border. We've been told this story before of after the fact that Mor was kind of promised to the Autumn Court as a bride, and so Mor took it upon herself to lose her virginity, and so she would be less of a prize. She slept with Cassian. When Kier and then the Court of Nightmares found out about this, they brutally tortured her and then nailed a sign to her body and then left her for dead on the Autumn Court's border. And this, she remembers Eris's voice because she remembers waking up in the Autumn Court and hearing him talk over her, over her body. I'm not a Mor fan as a general rule. I do find Mor often annoying because she's a Nesta hater. And that's something I cannot tolerate personally. But what happened to her was truly horrific. And she thinks to herself, you are over 500 years old. She often reminded herself, she could face it, handle it better than this. I'm not in the habit of sleeping with Illyrian leftovers. That's what Eris had said over her. Even now, even after Azriel had found her in those woods, even after Madja had healed her until no trace of those nails marred her stomach, she should not have come here tonight. Her skin became tight, her stomach began roiling. Coward. She had faced down enemies, fought in many wars, and yet these two meals together, she's really struggling to even stay present. She is re-traumatizing her to see them next to each other and just talking. Nothing had ever happened between them. Mor locks back in, and we find out that they're discussing Baron who is the current High Lord of the Autumn Court, is trying to get into the human lands, although Feyre and Rhys remind him remind Eris to remind his father that he is not allowed. Mor knows she should say something to add something cutting and sharp to add to this conversation, but she truly cannot lock in. She's having such a hard time just being in the presence of Kier, her father, who's a monster, and Eris, who just left her for dead on the border. And then it's over and they're walking away. Then we jump to Mr. Rhys's head. Rhys is in his study in the House of Wynn, and Azriel comes in, and Azriel updates him on kind of what's happening with the Illyrian clans. There's more dissension than they would have hoped for, which they probably would have hoped for 0. But things are looking not great there. And Az says to him, the Illyrians are pieces of crap. They train as warriors, and yet when they don't come home, their families make us into villains for sending them into war. And Rhys is their families have lost something irreplaceable. I think this is actually disgusting rhetoric. Just because you were trained to be a warrior doesn't mean you have to be okay with, 1, every war that is fought, and 2, with the fact that I don't know, people are dying. Those are human lives. I think their families can be mad. That's crazy, Az. Calm down. Rhys is okay, well, I'm not going to disband the Illyrians. They're too important as a military power. But the bigger issue is what's going on with the human queens. They haven't gone back to their own territories. And then we kind of get an update on what's happening as far as the human side of things post-war. We got to keep an eye on things as far as we kind of have a power vacuum in the human world right now. Vasa and Jurian are still working with Grayson and staying with him, it seems, in the human territories. And they've put together a council of wealthy lords and merchants that Jurian has stepped in to lead, using Grayson's family estate as his seat of command. Vasa is still on reprieve from her curse. She's like locked. She's like committed to this like warrior wizard that has her as like a firebird part-time and part-time girly. But she's like on a break. She's on a sabbatical from that lifetime situation for now to deal with this human situation. And Rhys is like, unless the human queen step out of line, like it's not our place to step in. This is like human politics. We are involved in Fae politics. And Asriel suggests they send Lucien in, and Rhys is like, he's away right now. And Asriel says, where? And Rhys says, you're my spy master, shouldn't you know? And Az says, he's Elaine's mate. It would be an invasion of her privacy to track him. That's never stopped you before. Asriel literally has like spies on everybody. This is crazy behavior, Az. You cannot leave Lucien as like a big gaping hole in your spying. I think that's a terrible idea. I don't trust him, Az. Anyway, Rhys explains he went to the spring court. He'll be there for the solstice. Tamlin invited him for the holiday. And Az is like, okay. And then he's like, hey, are we expected to get the sisters' presents? And Rhys is like, he says this about Nesta. I think bankrolling Nesta's apartment and her drinking was a gift enough. No, I don't think Nesta gives a heck. And I don't think Elaine expects to receive anything from us. I'd leave the sisters to exchange presents amongst themselves. Okay. You could get them presents if you want. Stop. Like, we'll get to the part where Nesta doesn't get any presents from anyone, and it will hurt my feelings. Oh my god. This is the part I cried at. One thing about me is I love Christmas, and gift giving is my love language. So if I were to arrive at Christmas and nobody got me any presents, I would be shattered. We're not there yet, though. Okay. Rhys plans to go visit the spring court himself soon, and then he is going to head out to Grayson's manor. Az offers to come with him, but Rhys is like, I need to do this alone. We also learn that Bryaxis is still missing. There's no sign of her. They often refer to her as it, but I've decided that she gives girly energy, and so I have she heard Bryaxis. And Asriel should I go look for it? Her. Don't be rude. And Rhys says, let her enjoy the solstice as well. So she gets the solstice before they're going to start hunting for Bryaxis, who's missing. And then Rhys says, when do you head out for Rose Hall? And Asriel says, the morning after solstice. I still need to do some shopping before I go. And then Rhys says, buy her something for me. Will you? Put it on my account this time. But he knows that Az wouldn't. What is Rose Hall? I actually meant to look this up. But this book... But according to Kindle, this book is not yet enabled for searching, and so I can't search up Rose Hall in the book. Am I supposed to know what Rose Hall is? I don't think I do. Let me know if I should know what that is. Okay, great. Back to Cassian. He is up at the Illyrian mountain still. There's a big storm coming just before solstice, and everyone around camp can feel it brewing. Cassian gives the girls the day off of training because of it. I do think we did spend a whole chapter negotiating with Devlin to make sure they had time for training, and now we're just not even going to make them train. Okay. Fair enough, I guess. And he explains that limited patrols would happen during the storm. They won't stop patrols entirely because, enemies can still show up during storms, but it seems unlikely. Cassian walks into the store, and there's this woman working the counter of this kind of apothecary type store. And the first thing he notices about her is that she has pretty substantial wing scarring, which is pretty common practice here in Illyria. It is banned, but that doesn't stop you guys from doing it. And it is done to the women to prevent them from being able to fly. It's horrific. And we learn that this woman's name is Emerie, and Emerie stares at him in a way that reminds him of Nesta. He thinks to himself, he half wondered what might happen if the two of them ever met. What might come of it? Because they both have this intensity to their gazes. They will meet, and it'll be delightful. He's looking for Proteus, but she explains that her father died in the war, so this is her shop. Now she owns it. She's the boss. She's a girl boss in this store. He clears out her winter gear and then tells her he'd like her to give it to the people at camp who need it during the storm that is approaching. And Emerie's like, a lot of them don't like me. And Cassian says, they don't like me either. You're in good company. Consider it good advertising for the shop. Tell them it was a gift from their High Lord. And Cassian talks about the fact that he had always considered Proteus, the owner of this shop, to be a fairly good man, a decent Illyrian. But looking at those scars on Emerie's wings, Cassian is I wish that I could kill him myself. Like, he does think that is like such a horrific thing to do to someone. Cassian loves flying so much too, so to rob someone of that feels like one of the worst things that you could possibly do. Miss Feyre is headed back to Racina's studio for the painting group, and she's literally like sick to her stomach. She's like nauseous at the idea of painting. It will be the first time she's painting since the war, and she's also never painted with a group before. This has always been an activity that she's only done by herself. Rhys kind of like checks in with her down the bond because he can sense how uncomfortable she is, and he even offers to come with her since she's so nervous. And she ends up deciding that she doesn't want this first painting post-war to be painted with an audience. She wants to be able to do it by herself. So she heads to one of the abandoned buildings in the Rainbow. And she sets up a little studio in this abandoned building. She paints for a long time. She can't stop herself from just like letting it all out. And she ends up painting until midnight, until she's like literally sore and like starving. And it feels like a heal. She can like feel herself like healing as she goes through it. And she looks over what she's created, and it's a painting of what she had seen in the Ouroboros, which is like that mirror she had needed to get in the last book, and it like revealed her like true inner self, and it was like, you know, a nasty creature. She leaves it in the warehouse to dry, and she doesn't even sign her name on the off chance that someone might find it. Like, very private about it. I don't know if shame is the right word, but there is like this level of like privacy. Like, she doesn't want this to be like publicly necessarily known. Back with Rhys. Rhys is headed to the spring court. He's in the spring court, and he says nothing is blooming. The house itself had looked better the day after Amarantha's cronies had trashed it. Tamlin answers the front door when he arrives there, and the manor appears to be entirely empty besides Tamlin, like not even servants there. And Tamlin says, Lucien claimed that you would come. What do you want? And Rhys says, I want to have a little chat. Can I trouble you for a cup of tea? Tamlin brings him inside to the library, and Rhys thinks that this place like kind of reminds him of like a tomb. There's something just like dead about it. The whole house is in complete disarray. The furniture is all shredded and like toppled. Like, it is just like a disaster in there. Lucien is nowhere to be seen, and Rhys asks about him, and Tamlin explains that Lucien is out hunting for their dinner. And Rhys says, I hear you aren't enforcing your borders. And Tamlin says, do you see any sentries around to do it? And Rhys says, Feyre did her work thoroughly, didn't she? Clever, isn't she? And Rhys continues to kind of like bicker and like poke and prod at Tamlin. The moral of the story is that Rhys wants to send some night court sentries to help patrol the border, because they need to maintain this border between Spring Court and the human realms, because Spring Court controls the border between all of the Feylands and the human realms. The goal is to like protect the humans and also just like maintain the peace that they established through the war effort. But Tamlin does not want any night court brutes, as he says, on his land. And Rhys is like really triggered by this like brute word. I think the Illyrians in general have this soft spot around being called like brutes. And then Rhys is like, you know what? You are so mean to Feyre. You deserve all of this. And he loses his temper, and he says to Tamlin, I hope you are miserable. You deserve it. And then Tamlin kicks him out of his house, obviously, because you can't say that and expect to stick around. Rhys winnows away and realizes that Tamlin has no shields up around his house, and he's clearly like waiting for someone to just like come and get him. Like, Tamlin is like in not a great headspace currently. He immediately heads back to Velaris and finds Feyre shopping in the middle of the city, and she immediately can tell that things did not go well in the spring court. And Rhys kind of gives her the full recap, and Feyre says, did you go because you were concerned about the wall, or just because you wanted to say those things to him? And Rhys says both, but he knows he should be the bigger man, like he needs to be the one in control because he's literally governing, but it's hard. And Feyre assures him it's fine because she's like literally 20. And so like, what the fuck does she know? But then he tells Feyre he's got some errands to run, so he can't hang out with her. And he heads to the Palace of Threads and Jewels. He knows that Feyre's not going to want any jewels herself, but he picks some nice stuff out for Miss Emerie. Everyone's getting her some jewelry for Solstice because that's what she'd want. Meanwhile, Miss Feyre is back at the house, and Cassian has brought over a bunch of pine boughs to decorate for Christmas, and Feyre's confused. That's like not custom in the human lands, and so Cassian kind of has to explain it to them. They wind up drinking and like decorating, and honestly, they get like drunk essentially. When Az and Mor wind up showing up, they have already drunk 2 bottles of wine. Azriel is like tidying up the messes they made. They're like lounging, eating cookies together, drinking. Rhys arrives and like teases them about drinking all of his wine. And then Mor and Emerie arrive, and Cassian starts to pick a fight with Emerie, and she's like, I wouldn't do that, especially with Nesta coming for Solstice in a few days. I'm going to enjoy seeing her shred into you, if she shows up sober. And Feyre's like, leave Nesta out of it. And then Emerie lets them know that Varian is coming with her to Solstice. Elaine, meanwhile, is in the kitchen with Nuala and Serdwin working on dinner, and Feyre goes in to chat with her. She asks if her sister has heard from Nesta at all, and Elaine explains that she invited her to dinner tonight, but never heard back. And Elaine is baking bread. She's a sourdough girly. She has a little starter, I imagine. She feeds it every morning. I bet her bread is so delicious. I would love some Elaine sourdough. I think it's probably great. And Feyre's like, well, should I go get her? I could go bring her to dinner. And Elaine says, are you asking me that as your sister or as the seer? Feyre says, you know Nesta best. I thought you might like to weigh in. And Elaine says, if Nesta doesn't want to be here tonight, then it's more trouble than it's worth to bring her. And then the shadow wraiths give Feyre a look that Feyre can like pretty easily interpret as Elaine having like a rough day. Like she was also like fairly traumatized by the whole like King of Hybern situation with her dad being killed in front of her, and then Elaine was the one who kind of like killed the King of Hybern. Like Elaine and Nesta kind of did it together, but Elaine was the one who like struck the first blow, and then Nesta, you know, took off his head. So she has some like trauma. Some trauma, and like sometimes it comes out. We learn that Elaine like really regularly visits their father's grave, although Nesta has never been. Feyre has invited her on multiple occasions, but like Nesta has never deigned to go. Elaine admits as they're setting the table that Nesta told her that she didn't want to come to Solstice, and Feyre's like, that's fine. And Elaine's like, yeah, she said she didn't want to come to anything ever. She said she literally didn't want to ever again. And Feyre's like, did she say why? Elaine said no. Anger. There was anger at Elaine's face too. She said that we have our own lives and she has hers. And Feyre's like, you know what? I'm gonna go talk to her. And Elaine is like, don't. She won't listen. And Feyre's like, and you? Are you all right? And then Elaine says, why wouldn't I be? I do think there's like a particular sadness here for Elaine, because Elaine and Nesta had always been so close. Like Feyre had never really been close with her sisters, but it did appear, at least from Feyre's perspective, that Elaine and Nesta had been really close, and to kind of lose Nesta, I think really does hurt Elaine's feelings. They all head to the dining room table. Feyre sitting between Emerie and Mor. She watches as Elaine says hi to Asriel, and then he just like takes the serving dish from her and holds it for her. Like clearly vibes are so flirty between Asriel and Elaine. And then Elaine slips out to take her apron off before dinner, and Az makes them all wait until she returns to start eating, and Cassian like kind of like teases him about it, and Az kind of like snaps at him and is like, no, not okay. And Rhys kind of mentally explains to Feyre that it's a reflection of how how his mother was treated. He like it's very important to him that like women are treated with like respect, and the people that like cook and serve the food for them are treated with like dignity and respect, because his mother so often was not. Because Amren is Fae now, she has to eat people food and she's complaining about it. She hates it. She like wishes she could drink blood again. It's so annoying. She's like, it takes so much longer to eat it. Also, I have to pee and poop now. Big bummer. She talks about how she wishes she had a male form instead of a female form, because then she could pee standing up. And we learned that like she could have picked male or female when she like showed up and got a form here in Velaris, and she picked female because she thought they were prettier. She's like, they looked cuter. So that's why I picked that. She says more symmetrical, but yeah. And then Feyre and Rhys fly over to Nesta's house after dinner. Nesta doesn't answer the door, and Rhys offers to magically look for her, and they find her at the Wolf's Den, which is like the yuckiest bar in all of Velaris. Feyre goes in alone. Obviously, Rhys and Nesta, the minute they're in a room, they're fighting. And so like we would like to avoid that if possible. And Feyre is also hoping that she can slip in unnoticed, and also for the chance that Nesta will kind of be like more responsive if it's just her. Nesta doesn't have any drinking companions that she goes with regularly. She doesn't have any friends. She normally goes out alone, although sometimes she will bring home a boy to sleep with for the night. She's at this back table playing cards with 3 other men, and she's looking like very gaunt. We're told that like Elaine has like kind of like started eating and like filling out again after the war. She like is looking so much better, and Nesta has kind of done the opposite. Like she is just looking like skeletal and like scary. Like she's just like not eating enough. But she looks incredibly pulled together. She, despite the fact that she's living in like the slums and she's like clearly not taking care of herself as far as eating, she is like, she's got her hair in her typical braid, and she's in a gray spotless gown. Like she looks gorgeous, is well as sad. and Feyre thinks this. A queen without a throne. That's what I'd call the painting that swept into my mind. There's something regal about her. Nesta notices Feyre the moment she walks into the bar, but doesn't move from her game of cards. And Feyre comes up and tells the boys to like scram, essentially. Like, I hate to interrupt your night out, gentlemen, but I would like a word with my sister. Essentially being like, get the heck out of here. Once the men leave, Feyre says to her sister, which one was going home with you tonight? Nesta says, I hadn't decided. And then they just stare at each other for a moment, and Rhys is teasing Feyre through the bond, while Feyre like tries to ignore him. And then Nesta says, is that maid of yours going to stand in the cold all night? They were surprised that Nesta either clocked Rhys outside somehow or was able to sense that they were like chatting through the bond. and like quickly like shifts the topic to something else. And she shifts the topic to the dinner invite and how Elaine really does want to see her and spend time with her. And Nesta says, I wanted to hear the musicians tonight, like gesturing to the musicians at the bar. Elaine could have had dinner with me. Like, Elaine could have joined me instead of staying with you. I think the implication here being that Nesta kind of feels like Elaine has chosen her sister over her. And, yeah. I think there's a hurt in that, too. I think Nesta is just, like, hurt in all manners that can be hurt. And so she's a big bruise. So anything that happens to her is painful. I think that's where Nesta's at right now. And Feyre says, you know she wouldn't be comfortable. She doesn't like crowds. And Nesta says she didn't use that to be that way. She used to love balls and parties. And Feyre says, if you bothered to come by the house, you'd see that she's readjusting. But balls and parties are one thing, but Elaine never patronized taverns like this before. And Feyre once again invites Nesta to the Solstice, both for Feyre and Elaine's sake. They both want to see their sister. And Feyre is like, what do you need for me to give you in order for you to come? Like, I'm willing to bargain with you. And Nesta says, it's not even our holiday. We don't have holidays. And Feyre's like, why? Why do you insist on distancing yourself? And Nesta says, why do I have to be part of your merry little band? And Feyre says, you are my sister. And Nesta says, I'm not going. And Feyre starts, father would want you to. And Nesta says, don't finish that sentence. Leave. And Feyre says, please come. And Nesta says, okay, my rent is due next week in case you forgot. And Feyre says, come to Solstice and I'll make sure it's delivered. Horrifying. I hate it. Thanks, I hate it. Back to Rhys. Rhys is walking around the grounds of their estate with Mor. They really haven't had much time alone together recently, so they're just like chatting. And he's like mostly thinking about the effort that's been made to rebuild Velaris and all the work that's been going into rebuilding the city. Mor says to Rhys, Kira's coming here soon, isn't he? And Rhys says he is, likely in the spring. Rhys had to reveal the location of Velaris to the Court of Nightmares in order to get Kira to agree to bring his like Nightbringers, this like military force, with them to assist with the war. And while it was like very necessary to do in order to win the war, it like really hurt Mor, and she is very nervous about having Kira in the space that she's kind of like reclaimed for herself. And Mor says, I trust you, but I wish there had been another way. And Rhys says, me too. But when your father visits, I can make sure you're away. And Mor says, no, he'll see it for what it is, hiding. I won't give him the satisfaction. And then Rhys explains that like the boys have been working hard for months on the security protocols for when he's here and like making sure that Velaris stays Velaris and like stays a safe, happy place for everyone. Then they switch to briefly talking about presents, but neither really wants to reveal what they've gotten for each other or for Feyre. And then they switch to politics, and Rhys is like, I'm going to need you to do some work in some other lands, kind of some diplomatic work in other lands to help us maintain the peace. Like Azriel, of course, will obviously infiltrate kind of secretly, but like Mor needs to act as like the diplomatic face of the Night Court in these faraway lands. We kind of learned that like treaty negotiations are really dragging on, and like the treaty has not been formalized yet, and Mor's role would just be kind of popping into these other places to just keep an eye on things, make their presence known, become like friendly. Again, diplomatic work. Rhys will take over her duties with the Court of Nightmares, because right now she acts as emissary between Court of Dreams and Court of Nightmares. Rhys will take over that role, but she'll need to head out in about a month-ish, and so she probably wouldn't be around when Kira comes to visit. But of course, it's her decision if she wants to like switch the position, because she gets to decide these things. Back to Feyre. Feyre is still trying to figure out what to get her husband for the solstice. Her and Elaine are shopping while the rest of the crew sleeps at the house, and Feyre's feeling like really guilty about shopping while so many people are still struggling post-war. Elaine says to her, I know it's not easy for you. And Feyre says, what's not easy? And Elaine says, buying things without a dire need to do so. And Feyre says, well, we have everything we need. Buying presents seems excessive. And Elaine says, it's their tradition, though. One that they fought and died to protect in the war. Perhaps that's the better way to think of it, rather than feeling guilty, to remember that this day means something to them, all of them, regardless of who has more and who has less, and in celebrating the traditions, even though the presents, we honor those who fought for its very existence, for the peace the city now has. Gorgeous. And Feyre's like, okay, you know what? Yeah, we can reframe this. Then she goes up to one of these artisans in the market, and she sees this like absolutely gorgeous tapestry that is like pure black with these like silver threads that run through it, and it catches her attention. She's looking at it, and the artist, this weaver, not the weaver but a weaver, the weaver I think tragically died in the war, right? I believe so. This weaver, this like specific weaver, explains that the fabric she has called void because it absorbs all light. It's a complete lack of color. She explains that she was working on it in the wake of like losing her husband in the war. She says to Feyre, I thought we'd have 1,000 more years together. She began to coax the loom back into movement. In the 300 years we were wed, we never had the chance to have children. Her fingers move beautifully, unfalteringly, despite her words. I don't even have a piece of him in that way. He's gone, and I'm not. Void was born of that feeling. And then Elaine asks what the silver threads are called. And the Weaver says, I call it hope. I made it after I mastered Void. And Feyre asks her, how do you keep creating despite what you've lost? And the Weaver says, not TM. And Weaver says, I have to create or it was all for nothing. I have to create or I will crumple up with despair and never leave my bed. I have to create because I have no other way of voicing this. It is hard and it hurts. But if I were to stop, then there would be no hope shining in the void. Feyre ends up buying the tapestry, not as a gift, but for herself, which is actually my personal favorite type of Christmas shopping. I feel like I'm not someone who buys like a lot of random things regularly, but like once I open up like my brain to like shopping, like we're shopping, I'm shopping for myself as well as for the gifts. Like I'm buying myself random crap that I didn't need either. Maybe that's the ploy of Christmas. I do think that's what the shops are kind of banking on. They shop for a little bit longer together before Feyre heads to that empty warehouse in the rainbow to continue working on her painting. She paints for hours. Rosina finds her in there surprising Feyre, and Rosina explains that she's been cleaning this place because Polina, who is the woman who had this before and then died in the war, Polina's family hasn't decided what they're going to do with this place, and she wants to keep it clean in case they plan to sell it later. And she also explains that she thinks Polina would have really liked that Feyre was using it as like a safe space for her to paint. And she even suggests that Feyre buy it. She says, here's where Polina's family is, here's where you can find them, and if you decide you do want it, just go out to them. I'm sure, imagine they'd be happy to sell it to you. On her way out, she literally bumps into Rhys, and Rhys is like, why are you running out of an abandoned gallery? Like, you've stolen something? And Feyre doesn't answer until they reach the river, and then she explains it's where she's been painting, and how that space had belonged to an artist who had died during the war. And Rhys says, we can buy you a studio space if you need somewhere to paint by yourself. And Feyre says, it's not so much being alone as like the space itself. Like, it needs to feel right. And then she goes on to say, but painting helped me. Do you think it's stupid to wonder if painting might help others too? Not my painting, I mean, but teaching others to paint, letting them paint. People who might struggle the same way I do. And Rhys says, I don't think that's stupid at all. Like, I think that's a great idea. And Feyre's like, do you think anyone would come if such a space were to be available? And Rhys says, I think you'll have to see, I suppose. Then Feyre heads to Amorin's, and she arrives there, and first thing she notices is it's really stinky smelly there. And then she can tell that the bed is all messed up. Her and Varian were just doing bedroom activities. Upsetting. Varian's now out in the town because he's buying her some more presents for her. Obsessed. And Amorin is at home doing a puzzle. What a life. What a queenie. Feyre came over to ask Amorin about Nesta. Apparently Nesta comes over to Amorin's every few days. It seems like Nesta is actually talking to Amorin. Feyre is surprised at this because she never visits the townhouse or House of Wind. And Amorin says to her, I like your sister. I like her because so few do. I like her because she is not easy to be around or to understand. Because I like her, I am not inclined to gossip about her and her current state. And Feyre's like, I'm worried about her. And Amorin says, I will not betray her confidence. Give her time. Give her space. Give her the opportunity to sort through this on her own. And Feyre's like, it has been months. And Amorin says, she is immortal. Months are inconsequential. Feyre says, she refuses to come home for Solstice. Elaine will be heartbroken if she doesn't. Elaine, are you? Amorin says. And that Feyre says, if Nesta deigns to visit you, could you tell her it would make a great deal if she came on Solstice? And Amorin says, I make no promises. Interesting. I don't know if you're going to have one friend if I would pick Amorin, personally. Personally, I would maybe not pick Amorin as my single friend, but I'm not Nesta. Then we get to Rhys. Rhys is hanging out with Cassian and Azriel. He's like showing them to their room that they're going to be sharing for Solstice. They have like bunk beds essentially. And Cassian's brought like a whole bag of weapons, and Rhys like comments on it. And Cassian's like, okay, some of them might be gifts, Rhys, you don't know. And then we learn that they've been demoted to like the worst bedroom because all the girls get a better one, but at least that's better than Lucian's bedroom. They have like a space for Lucian up in the attic if he happens to show up. It's still unclear if Nesta's coming, but they have a room saved for her as well. Cassian wants updates on the camp situation. They have a new schedule for the training for the girls, but all of the negative Nancys that are being cranky pants McGee about the whole situation are going to just like be put on hold until after Solstice. They'll kind of see what happens post Solstice as far as the dissension goes and go from there. Rhys suggests that Cassian should get his own place here because he has a place in Illyria, or he stays at the House of Wind. And, like, I'm really confused. I really thought Cassian and Azriel had a place in Velaris, but it seems like they just stay at the townhouse. I'm confused. I don't know where the boys live. Do they have homes? I assumed so, but maybe they don't. It's solstice evening and Solstice Eve. Everyone's chilling around the fireplace. Rhys sees Feyre and is like, oh my god, she's so hot. Varian is there, and he explains that in Summer Court, they only celebrate summer solstice. And my notes say, it's giving Australia. Okay. Rhys offers that Varian can invite Tarquin to their solstice celebration if he wants, because obviously that'd be nice. They're trying to create diplomatic ties with Summer Court again after the whole stealing the Book of Breathings thing. They're still a little upset about that. And then Feyre realizes Nesta is not coming to this dinner. They had invited her to this, like, Solstice Eve celebration, and she's clearly not coming. But Rhys is like, you know what? Let's hold out hope that she might show up to the main event tomorrow. And then Rhys gives a little cheers. He says, to family old and new, let the solstice festivities begin. It's solstice morning, and Rhys brings Feyre her first present in bed. Feyre's got a little bit of a hangover, but Rhys is feeling real chipper. He says to her, happy birthday, Feyre, darling. Because it is her birthday, and she's surprised to be getting a present right now because she thought they were all doing presents tonight, but it's her birthday, so she doesn't have to follow the rules. Also, she gets double presents. And I don't think Feyre gets double presents, and she seems cool with it, but I would be mad if my birthday was on Christmas and I didn't get double presents. Like, you do owe me a birthday present and a Christmas present. Her first present is a sketchbook with her initials on the front. And then her second present is a scarf, a sky blue wool scarf. And then she also gets a new satchel for her painting supplies with a new set of pencils and charcoals already inside. And Feyre then decides she's got a big present coming later too. Rhys is like, your big solstice present is for later. And then Feyre decides, as part of her birthday celebration, she wants to draw a nude portrait of Rhys. Okay. It's like midday before they wind up leaving their bedroom, and the kitchen smells amazing. Breakfast is waiting for them on the table, and Cyrwin, Nawala, and Elaine are already working on the next meal. Mor is still sleeping off drinks from the night before, and Cassian and Azriel come to pick up Rhys to take him off for their annual tradition. Feyre doesn't know where, and Rhys won't tell her as they're leaving. But Feyre, finishes up her breakfast alone and then uses the quiet to go back to her office to do more paperwork. Rhys checks on her through the bond, but he won't tell her where they are or what they're up to. She's checking on the budget, and of course they have the budget to buy that studio space if she does want it in their personal family budget. And then she decides that's enough of paperwork, and she goes to find Elaine. Elaine meets her in the hallway. She has a big tray of baked goods, and the shadow girlies have made a whole table full of baked goods. There's cakes and pies and cookies and all sorts of fun, delicious things. Feyre's like, oh my gosh, how long have you guys been working on this? And Elaine says, since dawn, Nawala and Cyrwin were up hours earlier. And then Elaine asks, have you heard any word from her? The her clearly being Nesta. But before Feyre can answer, someone knocks on the front door. And they're hopeful it's Nesta, but it's not. It's Lucien. Boo! Lucian's here. He brought presents. They gather in the sitting room around the fire. Elaine sits with them too. Feyre invites him to stay for the night, but Lucian's like, I have other plans. He explains that he's been staying with Jurian and Vasa, mostly just kind of popping in and out of the spring court. But that he's been staying most of the time at this manor that has been gifted to him by Grayson. I'm so sure in Elaine's book we're going to see so much of Grayson. We haven't seen the last of him. And everyone kind of wants me to think he's evil, but and I know he was such a D-bag to Elaine in the last book, but part of me just really feels like Elaine's not a dummy. You know, Elaine is not a dumb dummy. So if she was truly in love with this boy, maybe there was something to it. I feel like Elaine is just made of secrets, and I'm so curious to learn them all. Also, Lucien starts acting so sketch about Vasa. Those two have been hooking up, right? I know he has a mate, and he's been I've been a good citizen since I got a mate. But his mate doesn't care about him. I think he's kissing Vasa. If I had to put money on it. I would guess. They've had a little smoocheroo or two. Anyway, Jurian is keeping everything running on the human side of things. Vasa and Jurian really clearly agree on their vision for what they want the human world to look like, but they have different methods that they want to use to get there. So there's some tension there. But then he's like, you know what, this is not a good solstice conversation. Let's talk about something else. And Elaine's like, actually, I gotta go help in the kitchen. And she gets up and leaves. Once Elaine's left the room, he asks Feyre how Elaine is doing, and Lucien is like, does she still mourn him? And Feyre was like, she was deeply in love with him, Lucien, and it's only been a few months. Grayson has made it clear that the engagement has ended, but it might take her a little longer to move past it. And Lucian's like, he's a prick. Like, he's not a nice guy. And Feyre kind of realizes that they, like, Lucian and Grayson have probably spent, like, quite a bit of time together since Lucian has been working so closely with the humans. I need to know more about this. I'm, like, so deeply curious. Give me ACOTAR 6 ASAP. Yeah. And Feyre's like, I totally get it. Like, I also think he's a prick, but, like, they were engaged. So, like, give her time. Again, months are inconsequential to you when you have immortality. Lucian is being such, like, a whiny baby about it. And Feyre's like, maybe try spending some time with her. And Lucian's like, I can't. She doesn't even want to be in the same room as me. Okay, well, if you're not here, it's hard for her to, like, get acclimated. And Feyre says, I'd hoped that when you'd rented that apartment in town, it meant that you would come work with us, be our human emissary. And Lucian's like, am I not doing that now? Am I not sending twice weekly reports to your spy master? And Feyre's like, yeah, but you could, like, live here and actually, like, interact with us on a regular basis. And Lucian's like, I don't need your charity. And then they bicker about, like, the fact that he's accepting charity by staying with, like, Vasa and Jurian. Also, like, he, like, has a job. Like, he has a job and just getting paid. Like, as long as you're doing your job, it's not charity. Like, they have to pay you because, like, that's how jobs work. What? Anyway, and then he explains that he feels at home with them because all three of them, Vasa, Jurian, and Lucian, are exiles, and they call themselves the Band of Exiles. They've given themselves a name. And Feyre's like, Jurian isn't even exiled. And Lucian's like, okay, all his people are gone, so if he wants to call himself exiled, he can. And then Feyre says, you have this name for yourself. What exactly does this Band of Exiles do? Host events? Organize party planning committees? Feyre's like, this is disgusting. You know what? Never mind. I don't think I want Elaine to be with you. This is giving the biggest dick of all time. The Band of Exiles. Please stay over there. It's giving the Tortured Poets Department. If you're not deep in the Taylor lore, you might not know. The Tortured Poets Department, the Taylor Swift album, is supposedly named because there was a group chat on Joe Alwyn's phone that was called the Tortured Poets. That was, like, him and some other actors. And, you know, it was the ick that, like, caused her to, I don't think it was the ick that caused her to leave, but, like, it was a little icky. And I feel like giving yourself a name that is, like, talking about how, like, aw, how sad are we? That's a little cringy. And telling other people, if you want to use that name amongst yourselves, if you want to label your group chat that in your phone, gorge, you start telling other people that we're the Band of Exiles, it's embarrassing. Are you embarrassed, Lucian? You should be. Anyway, Lucian goes on to say, I don't have anywhere else to go. You ruined the chances I have going back to spring. Not to Tamlin, but to the court beyond his house. Everyone either believes the lies you spun, or they believe me complicit in your deceit. I can't stand to be in the same room as her for more than 2 minutes. I can't stand to be in this court and have your mate pay for the very clothes on my back. Tamlin sent all my belongings back and had it dumped on my doorstep, which was a clearly response to Rhys's visit, and Feyre's, like, not particularly sad that she's like, well, I am still not sad that he was mean to Tamlin. Like, he was... Like, Tamlin was still, like, really kind of, you know, like, abusive to Feyre. So, like, is she supposed to feel sad about him? I don't know. Then Lucian says, you will need Tamlin as an ally before the dust has settled. Tread carefully. Don't tell me what to do. 1. And 2, do not tell her she has to be kind to the man who abused her. Anyway, Rhys, sensing her annoyance through the bond, is like, do I need to come home? But he doesn't, because Lucian, like, leaves his presence and goes. He leaves 1 for Elaine, 1 for Feyre. Then Feyre goes to Elaine into the kitchen and lets her know that Lucian's gone. And then she goes and she lectures Elaine for not talking to him. Okay. He wasn't super pleasant to talk to. Why are you forcing your sister to speak to him? Feyre's like, he brought you a present. And Elaine says, does that entitle him to my time and my affections? And Feyre's like, no, but he's a good male. He cares for you. And Elaine's like, he does not know me. Elaine here with the most valid of points. And Feyre says, you don't even give them the chance to try to do so. And Elaine says, I don't want a mate. I don't want a male. Feyre's like, he's a good mate. Or he's a good male. And it's just, I don't like to see either of you unhappy. Feyre, my sweet girl, is such a fixer. Like, if she sees a problem, she wants to fix it immediately, which, like, on that surface doesn't seem like a bad trait, but actually becomes, like, quite troublesome, because I think, 1, it, like, is easy for her to be, like, resentful of the fact that people aren't, like, appreciative of all the things she's fixed for them. They, like, didn't ask you to fix them, so they don't have to say thank you. And also, sometimes people just, like, need time to, like, process, to, like, sit in their feelings. And I think Feyre, rather than, like, dealing with anything negative, is just like, well, we need to fix this ASAP. Like, the thought of, like, it being, like, none of her business has never crossed her mind. Because she can see it, like, obviously it's her business and she should fix it. It, like, is what caused her to go in the woods as a child and, like, save them from starving. And it is, like, what is causing her to shove her nose into Elaine's business and into Nesta's business a little less so now. And Elaine's like, I know you don't. Like, Elaine also knows her sister and knows that her sister just, like, wants to fix things because it's her nature. Feyre leaves the kitchen, finds Mor sitting on the stairs, and offers Feyre a drink, and they sit and chat. And Mor says to her, do you want my advice? Stay out of it. She's not ready, and neither is he. No matter how many presents he brings, let him live with his band of exiles. Let him deal with Tamlin in his own way. Let him figure out where he wants to be, who he wants to be. The same for her. I know you still blame yourself for your sisters being made, and because of that, you want to fix everything from them now that they're here. That's why we love you. Why they love you. Just be patient. It'll sort itself out. It always does. Feyre's like, I just want them to be happy, all of them. And Mor says, they will be. Feyre's like, are you happy? I could fix that too. And Mor says, it's solstice. I'm with my family. I'm drinking. I'm very happy. And then Feyre's like, by the way, where the heck are the boys? And Mor's like, oh, they didn't tell you? And she winnows them up to the mountains. And then we're up at the cabin. Feyre immediately spots snow forts because the boys are having a snowball fight, which is actually what they do every solstice. They have a big snowball fight every year since they're kids, and the winner is just, like, essentially the boy who stays out there the longest. Because, like, there's not really a great way to find a clear winner on a snowball fight. They head inside, Mor and Feyre first. The boys head inside not long after. Asriel has won for the 119th time. Mor and Feyre are just, like, chilling on the couch with a blanket. The boys then head to the sauna, another part of the tradition. This is a very Illyrian traditional behavior. They go sauna naked. Then they head back to the townhouse. Next time we see them, they're all dressed up for the holidays. Feyre has decided to wear her starfall dress again, and Rhys is giving a little toast. To the blessed darkness from which we were born and to which we return. Asriel comes up to Elaine and wishes her a happy solstice. And Elaine says, I've never participated in one of these. And Amren says, they're highly overrated. And Mor says the female who makes out like a bandit every year, I don't know how you don't get robbed going home with so much jewelry stuffed into your pockets. Then Rhys walks into the room and he has a huge multi-tiered cake with candles. And Cassian says, you thought you could sneak it past us, couldn't you? Didn't you? And Feyre says, you are all insufferable. And Elaine says, happy birthday, Feyre. Elaine made the cake, obviously, although she admits that novella did help with the decorating. And the tiers are each decorated like the dresser drawers, with Feyre's stars and night and moon on the bottom and Elaine's flowers on the top. We don't get the middle layer, but, like, I assume you have the silver flames in the middle. And this part did, like, make me tear up because I am a sucker for a sister moment in these books. Feyre blows out the candles and makes a wish, but she doesn't tell Rhys or us what it is. I think I know what it is, and it's upsetting to me. I don't like it. Anyway, then they do presents. Rhys is put in charge of holding all the presents every year because he doesn't snoop, and the rest of them would. Amren picks up the first present from Az. It's a pair of earrings. Mor gets this, like, red lingerie set from Cassian, which he just, like, essentially, she had told him to just, like, get for her. Ew. Weird. Ew. This is why I don't like Mor. Like, what the heck, Mor? This is weird behavior. Then there is a knock at the door. It's Nesta, my love. We've been talking about her all book. She's finally here. Feyre invites Nesta inside, gets her coat, and then Elaine kind of, like, walks her into the sitting room. Cassian's eyes are immediately locked on Nesta, and Elaine leads her sister straight to the liquor cabinet. Amren comments that Nesta needs to eat something, not drink something, because she's clearly, like, so thin. She's, like, gaunt again. And Amren says, happy solstice, girl. And Nesta goes, pretty earrings. Like, they clearly have, like, a tense, but, like, relationship, but still, like, a friendship of the sort. And then Elaine is like, hey, we were just about to start presents. And Feyre says, we haven't eaten yet, but if you're hungry, I can get you a plate. Nesta, takes a glass of wine. Elaine takes a shot of liquor because that's what she needs to do with her sister. And then Nesta notices the cake and tells her sister happy birthday. And then is like, go back to presents. Don't worry about me. And Elaine passes Nesta a present. Elaine, the only one who got Nesta a present. What a gem of a girl. Feyre, why the hell didn't you get your sister a present? You wanted her to come to Solstice so badly, but you didn't even get her a present? It's kind of mean. I know Nesta got no one presents. One, didn't even tell her that was a solstice tradition because, again, this is her first time. And even if, I don't know. Nesta's like, I just like want to hug her. She's having such a hard time. And it's sad to me that she only got one present. I mean, she kind of gets a second present later. Not really though. But like Feyre didn't get her a present. Feyre, you wanted her to come so bad and then you didn't even get her a present. Anyway, Elaine picked out a romance book for Nesta from the local bookshop. She had the owner like pick out a book that she thought would be good for Nesta. Feyre gives Amren a puzzle carrier so she can bring her puzzles to summer court and a brooch. And then Feyre gave Elaine a pale blue cloak. So she got Elaine a present, but she didn't give Nesta a present. You don't have to give her much. But it like really does make me sad that like Feyre didn't even get Nesta a present at all. And then Cassian, Azriel, and Mor all got paintings from Feyre. And then Feyre from Amren gets a manuscript from Azriel. She got paint from the continent, some really gorgeous colors. Cassian gives her a sheath for her back, for her blade, right along her spine, like a real Illyrian warrior. Elaine got her a brush set that's monogrammed with her initials, and Mor got her gorgeous slippers. Feyre gives Rhys a painting as well, and it is a painting of what she had seen in the Ouroboros mirror, and he immediately recognizes it and is like really choked up by the gift. Like it makes him emotional. And Feyre knows why. For on that painting, I'd shown him what I had not revealed to anyone, what the Ouroboros had revealed in me, the creature inside myself, the creature full of hate and regret and love and sacrifice, the creature that could be cruel and brave and sorrowful and joyous. I gave him me, as no one but him would ever see me. No one but him would ever understand. It's beautiful, he said, voice still hoarse. Then they opened the presents that Lucien left. Lucien got Feyre and Rhys some bottles of liquor. And then he gave Elaine these like magical gardening gloves that like can't get cut by anything and never get sweaty. And Elaine doesn't seem like thrilled by this gift. And Feyre thinks, and I wondered if she preferred to have torn and sweaty hands, if the dirt and the cuts were proof of her labor, her joy. Okay, this boy does not understand her. I'm gonna have to be like convinced real hard if like Sarah wants me to be convinced that Elaine should end up with Lucien. I'm like not buying it. And then Elaine gets Azriel a present, and it's this magic powder to mix into drinks, and she explains why. It's for the headaches everyone always gives you, since you rub your temples so often. And then Azriel starts to, like, belly laugh at this. Like, Azriel, who's just, like, always so quiet, is, like, belly laughing, and everyone joins in. Nesta watched warily from her chair. Elaine's present, her only present in her lap. Her spine stiffened slightly. Not at the words, but at Elaine, laughing with them, with us, as if Nesta were looking at us through some sort of window, as if she were still, oh my god, guys, how am I ever going to get through Silver Flames? As if she were still standing out in the front yard, watching us in the house. Ooh, I, like, literally makes me cry. Like, my baby. I'm never going to be able to get through Silver Flames in one piece. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough for me. Everyone stays until just after 2, and Feyre is, like, walking Nesta to the door, and Feyre, like, passes Nesta the money for her rent, and she, like, hopes for a moment that Nesta will, like, give the money back, that, like, she'll be like, you know what, like, I'm glad I came to Solstice, that she'll, like, say something. But Nesta just, like, takes the money and puts it in her pocket and, like, leaves. And then the moment Nesta is out the door, Cassian, like, storms past her and follows Nesta. And then we cut to Cassian's perspective. He'd had enough of the coldness, the sharpness, enough of the sword straight spine and razor sharp stare that had only honed itself these months. Cassian could barely hear over the roaring in his head as he charged into the snowy night. It was only when Cassian reached her that he realized he had nothing to say. Nothing to say that would make her laugh in his face. So he just says to her as he catches up with Nesta, I'll walk you home. And Nesta says, I'm fine. And Cassian says, it's a long walk and it's late. Nesta says, go back to the house. Cassian says, I think I needed some fresh air anyway. Cassian is, like, determined to walk her all the way to the front door. And she's, like, made it clear over and over again that she, like, wants nothing to do with him. And he knows it's because of the war and, like, the trauma that she experienced in the war and what she saw in that final battle and how just, like, it just, like, completely wrecked her. And he knows that she needs time to process. But he also, like, is tired of waiting. And he's also got her a solstice present, and he wanted to give it to her. And he explains that to her, and Nesta says, I don't want one. And Cassian says, you'll want this one. He prayed she would. It had taken him months to find it. He hadn't wanted to give it to her in front of the others, hadn't even known she'd be there tonight. He'd been well aware of Elaine's and Feyre's cajoling, just as he had been well aware of the money he'd seen Feyre give to Nesta moments before he'd left. I don't want anything from you. Cassian says, are you sure about that, sweetheart? Cassian shut out the words, shut out the image that chased him from his dreams night after night, not Nesta holding the king of Hybern's head like a trophy, not the way her father's neck had twisted in Hybern's hand, but the image of her leaning over him, covering Cassian's body with her own, ready to take the full brunt of the king's power for him, to die for him, with him, that slender, beautiful body, arching over him, shaking in terror, willing to face that end. He hadn't seen a glimpse of that person in months, had not seen her smile or laugh. He knew about the drinking, about the males. He told himself that he didn't care. He told himself that he didn't want to know who the bastard who had taken her maidenhead. Told himself he didn't want to know if the males had meant anything. If he meant anything. Oh my god, somebody help her. But I just feel like it's so clear that, like, Nesta's just, like, drowning, and I know she's shoving, like, everyone away. And it's on her a little bit, but, like, oh my gosh, she's just so sad. She's just so sad. Cassian says to her, I'm tired of playing these bullshit games. And Nesta says, I'm not. Cassian says, well, everyone else is. Perhaps you can find it in yourself to try a little harder this year. I know that's a foreign word to you. And Nesta says, why should I have to try to do anything? I was dragged into this world of yours, this court. And Cassian says, then go somewhere else. Perhaps I will. And Cassian knows that she doesn't have anywhere else to go. Like, she has no choice in this. She has no choice in her life right now. But he just, like, keeps poking. He says, be sure to write. And Nesta says, stop following me. Stop trying to haul me into your happy little circle. Stop doing all of it. He knew a wounded animal when he saw one. Knew the teeth they could bear, the viciousness they displayed. But it couldn't keep him from saying, your sisters love you. I can't for the life of me understand why, but they do. Oh my god, what a effed up thing to say to her right now. Cassian, you go apologize. If you can't be bothered to try for my happy little circle's sake, then at least try for them. A void seemed to enter those eyes. An endless, depthless void. She only said to him, Cassian, go home. Cassian says, talk to me, Nesta. And he, like, waits for her to, like, cut and say something, but she just, like, walks away as if he was nothing, if he was not worth her time. And he takes her present and he throws it into the river. Like, that is, like, such a... No, Cassian is just, like, trying his best. Cassian's, like, a sweet little gem. I love Cassian. But the fact he says, your sisters love you, I can't for the life of me understand why, but they do. And then he's like, talk to me. And, like, you just said, like, the cruelest thing you could possibly say to Nesta. And now you want her to talk to her? Now you want her to talk to you? But wait, then we get the tiniest section from Nesta, in which Nesta knows that Cassian follows her all the way home. She knows that he's on a nearby rooftop waiting for her light to go on, even now. And she knows she can either just, like, wait in the dark and, like, make him wait, or she can turn on a light and he'll leave. And she turns on a light. And then pulls the money out of her pocket from Feyre. It's enough for 3 months' rent, and she, like, waits for the shame to hit her. She tried and failed to muster the shame, but nothing came, nothing at all. There was anger occasionally, sharp, hot anger that sliced her, but most of the time it was silence. Rain, droning silence. She hadn't felt anything in months. Had dazed, where she didn't really know where she was or what she'd done. They passed swiftly, and it dripped by. So did the months. She'd blinked, and winter had fallen. Blinked, and her body had turned too thin, too hollow as she felt. And we learn here that she can't stand the sound of a popping fire because it sounds like necks snapping, and it had been, like, miserable at Solstice for her to just, like, sit there and listen to the fire pop, and she, like, refuses to to light a fire in her own home because it is just, like, so horrifying to her, that sound. Back to Feyre. She's back at the house 3 a.m. before everyone else goes to bed. Cassian returning, quiet and brooding from his trip to go walk Nesta home. Elaine is in the main room, up still showing Azriel her plans for the garden, and he's, like, watching, like, so excited to just listen to her. Oh, I love them. And then Rhys and Feyre head upstairs. And then Rhys winnows them back to the cabin for spicy times. And as they're, like, winnowing there, Feyre is, like, commenting about, like, I know, like, probably high ladies normally, like, switch outfits every day, but I, like, just love this dress. Like, I'm so attached to it. And then she says, you never told me where you got them. All my favorite dresses. And Rhys says, my mother made them. She was a seamstress back at the camp where she'd been raised. She didn't just do the work because she was ordered to. She did it because she loved it. And when she mated my father, she continued. Long ago, when I was still a boy, she made them all your gown. She made them, all your gowns. A trousseau for my future bride. Every piece I have ever given you to wear. She made them for you. Feyre's like, why didn't you tell me? This is, like, so special. This is, like, so sweet. And Rhys says, I thought you might be disturbed to wear gowns made by a female who died centuries ago. And Feyre says, I'm honored, Rhys, beyond words. And Rhys says, she would have loved you. And then Feyre's like, hey, I'm actually thinking, she's like the eyeballs tattooed on her palms that Rhys used to like spy on her sometimes. And she's like, I'm thinking, since you don't use them to spy on me anymore, that we can turn them into mountains. I want matching tattoos to the ones he has on his knees. And Rhys is like, okay, we can switch those, but those will have to be permanent. Like, ones, I don't know why. I don't know why the eyeballs are not permanent, but these ones would be. I'm not the boss. And she says, she's like, okay, good thing I plan on sticking around for a while. And then Feyre says, I have one last solstice gift for you. And she has Rhys like put down his mental shields so she can show him. And essentially she wants to get pregnant. And Rhys is like, we don't have to right now. And she's like, nope, I want to do it right now. Let's get pregnant ASAP. And you know what? This is devastating to me. This is devastating to me personally. I'm actually calling the police, 911. She turned 21 like 20 minutes ago. Okay? This girl's freshly 21. She's been out of her parents' house for 2 years. Or, well, her dad's house. Like, the book started 2 years ago. She's only been with Rhys for like a year. And she's like, we gotta have a baby. I'm devastated every time one of these like romantasy book series ends with the girl like finishing her like adventure and then immediately being like, we need to have a baby immediately. And I do think it's like partly because like as a society, I like probably could do like a whole video just on this. Like, I think as a society, we have like not a great concept culturally of what it looks like for like a woman to be like an adult woman who is not a mother. Like, I don't think we like fully, we have like this like young adult, like college age young girl like discovering herself sort of situation, but then like very quickly like we go into mother. We've got like the mother, maiden, crone. Like, those are the three things that a woman can be. And like a romantasy book loves to really like buy into this. Like, they're a maiden for like most of the book, you know, they start doing the hanky panky and by the end they're a mother. And like, I love kids. I'm not a mother personally, but like love kids, would love kids, you know, love motherhood as a concept. I think that's so important, so cool, so special, so magical. But especially these girls that get to live to be 2000 and who are like 17 to 19 at the beginning of these books. It's insane to me that the ending for all of them at the age of like 20, 21, 22, 23 is that they like immediately need to have a kid. Like, girl, you could live 100 years without a child. 100 years of not worrying about it. About like, you have to learn how to be a high lady and like govern well and like help your country like recover from this war and like establish itself firmly for the next one. And then also have time to paint, like, and travel and like not have a kid. Like, you just have, like, it's just so frustrating to me that they're never given that space to do that. Ever. Like, this is just like such a common pattern in these books. Is one, the girlies love to lose their power. And by love to lose, and the authors love to strip a girlie of her power. And two, then they like to saddle them with a baby. You could be powerful, but only for a short time. This is a short duration. Then you got to settle down and be a mom. And this is like not something that we didn't like learn from the time she was young. She didn't like want to be a mom. Right? Like, this is like really the first time. I mean, she like wants to be a mother with Rhys. We like learned that with like the bone carver in the last book. That she's like excited by the idea of like having a kid with Rhys. I love that. I think that's beautiful. I think that's so special. I just don't think you need to do it at freshly 21. Like, if a human girly at the age of baby 21 was like, I need to have a baby ASAP, I would be like, maybe you could chill for a sec. Give it a couple years with your fresh husband that you've known for less than a year. And well, she's known her husband for a year. She thought he was evil for the first couple months she knew him. So they've been married for less than a year, and they did not date really before they got married. Like, everything's happening real quick. Real quick. And we just like, we have nothing but time. You are immortal. You are going to get hundreds and hundreds of years. Let's spend 100 of them as just Feyre. Let's discover what Feyre Archereon wants when Feyre Archereon doesn't have a million things demanding her attention. You know? Like, girlie just learned how to read. Give her 1 minute. Give her 1 minute before she gets pregnant. We do not give her 1 minute. They hook up. They're going to get her pregnant literally tonight. They return to Laris the next morning. Everyone is still asleep. Rhys hasn't given Feyre her solstice present, and he takes her out to this estate that has this like gorgeous view of the rainbow. And he's like, I want you to build a house for us and for our family. And she's like worried about the cost. And he's like, don't even worry, we're so rich. Yes. Build a house with an office for you and one for me. Build a house with a bathtub big enough for 2 and for wings. Build a house with rooms for all of our family. Build a house with a garden for Elaine, a training ring for the Illyrian babies, a library for Amren, an enormous dressing room for Mor. Build a house with a nursery, Feyre. And Feyre says, I will. I hate it. Rhys then heads back to the Spring Court and to Tamlin's manor. Tamlin is alive. Yay! Rhys goes down to the kitchen and finds him. He just is sitting. Tamlin is just like sitting in a chair. There's a giant dead elk in the middle of the table. And Tamlin's just like sitting there staring at it. And Rhys is like, your dinner is leaking. And Tamlin just like stares at him. And then Rhys says, I spoke to Varian, Prince of Adriata. I requested that he ask Tarquin to dispatch soldiers to your border. They will arrive within a few days. Is that acceptable to you? Because Summer Court and Spring Court have always been allies, so it seems like more acceptable. Tamlin doesn't answer that question. He says instead, do you think she will forgive me? And Rhys says, do you want her to? And Tamlin says, do I deserve it? Do you forgive me for your mother and sister? And Rhys says, I don't ever recall hearing an apology. That might be a good place to start. Tamlin says, I don't think one will make a difference anyway for either of you. And then Rhys uses his magic to like make the elk into slabs of meat and then kindles the stove. And he says to him, eat, Tamlin. And I think this is really, I think there's something like really kind of special and beautiful about this, because in ACOTAR, and particularly in Prythian with the Fae, like this is the same thing that Feyre had told Rhys when she accepted his mating bond. This is like how you accept a mating bond. There is something about like feeding each other that is seen as kind of like holy and important in a way to like show community and relationship between people. I think that's generally, like, I think within our society as well, like food is often used that way, but like very clearly it's like ritualistically used in that way in Prythian. And so I think there is something like really profound about Rhys doing this for Tamlin and telling him to eat. And then he says, you can waste away and die after we've sorted out this new world of ours. And then he tells Tamlin to eat again, and then he leaves. Then we get this scene, this chapter from Morrigan, which I think I have never heard a soul speak of this chapter, and this chapter to me is the most compelling part of this entire book. Morrigan had lied to Feyre. She said she was headed to the Winter Court, and she will eventually, to go see Vivian, but she's going to her secret estate first. Morrigan has a whole secret estate that she initially got for the Quiet, but she keeps because of the horses. She loves to ride horses. Morrigan is a horse girl. She's out riding on her horse in Athelwood, an estate that she just keeps for the horses and for the Quiet, and she's riding on Elia, and we learn that she loves riding horses. Like, she loves winnowing for like the distance it can travel, but like horses, there's just this like sense of freedom, and like it's the closest thing she can get to like flying on her own, and she just loves it. And she only comes out here for a few days at a time. Like, girly is an extrovert. She normally likes to be around people, but sometimes she just needs the quiet. She's riding in the woods on her horse when her horse gets freaked out by something in the darkness, and we hear this of the thing in the forest. It did not move, did not seem to do anything but linger and watch, familiar yet foreign. Something in her power whispered not to touch it, not to go near it. Even from this distance, Mor obeyed. But she still watched that darkness in the thorns, as if a shadow had fallen asleep amongst them. Not like Asriel's shadows, twinning and whispering. Something different. Something stared back, watching her in turn. What the hell was that? What the hell was that? I have so many questions. She quickly takes the horse back to the estate, and she thinks to herself, what else might she see, witness, in lands where none in the Night Court had ventured for millennia? Its answer echoed off the rocks and trees and gray clouds overhead. Go, go, go. And so I think in this moment, Morrigan has decided to accept the offer that Rhys has put forth to have her act as a diplomat to faraway lands. So Morrigan will be leaving. I want to know more about her horse girl estate. I want to know more about this spooky thing in the woods. Do you think Laura's going to get a book? I do think in the contract we have more books than just Elaine's book that Sarah is promised to Bloomsbury. And I'd be curious to know if we're getting a more book / novella. Would love actually. Cut back to Feyre 2 days after the solstice, and Feyre's back in Polina's studio, and it's her studio now. The family had just given her the space when she approached them to buy it. They refused to accept any money. Instead, they suggested she donate to a local charity to provide artists financial help if they're struggling. And again, no more charity work for Feyre. You are the government. Set something up. Make a program. Make a government program. Don't make a that's your literal job. Anyway, Rosina comes in and says to her, so what are you going to do with the studio? And Feyre thinks to her, and then we get this little snippet from Feyre. And from far away, as if it was carried on the cold wind, I heard the Suriel's voice. Feyre Archereon, a request. Leave this world a better place than how you found it. And so Feyre says in response, you wouldn't be looking for a wholly inexperienced business partner, would you? And that's how we end this chapter. And it made me go, oh my God, Feyre. This is so great. I love this for Feyre. I think this is so cool and beautiful. I do think it's crazy that she's teaching art lessons without ever have taken an art lesson herself. Like, that's kind of crazy, but she's teaching children, we come to find out. So I think that's like mostly fine. But also, like, why are you so insistent on having a kid right now? You're trying to like high lady govern. You're trying to do all your volunteer work. And you want to start this like art studio situation. And you want to have a baby? A fresh baby on top of all that? Maybe give it a minute. A couple decades? You have so much time, girl. Anyway, Rhys is back at the Illyrian war camp overseeing the girlies' training. Cass and Azriel are both there that day as well. It's a smaller group than usual because some of the girlies still haven't returned from the solstice. But they've been looking into the unrest and they found a lot of it's linked to Cassian and the Iron Crest camp, Illyrian camp, which is a rival of this camp. And Azriel just like suggests a little accident might happen during the rite. I think this is just to like sprinkle in like unrest is happening amongst the Illyrians. You'll need to know this in the future. In general, it seems like the girly training program is going a little bit better now. Like everyone's kind of like leaned into it, settled into it. Cassian is like wary about the progress they've made though, and he doesn't want to jinx it. But Rhys encourages him that like this is a small step in the right direction and they can celebrate that. Then we cut back to Feyre. It's a month later and Feyre and Rhysina have been spending that time readying the studio to host lessons. And Feyre's also been working hard on the river house, which is what she's decided to call this house that they're building on that estate Rhys had gifted her. They have easels set up for the first of their lessons, and they're doing lessons for children who had experienced violence during the war, who had lost family members in the war, to help them kind of process. The plan is for Feyre to host a class once a day, depending on what her duties as High Lady would allow, and also her motherhood duties, because very soon she's going to be pregnant. Spoiler. Rhysina and the other teachers are hosting. They'll host classes as well. The classes are free to everyone, and they already have a lot of people that are like really excited for them. The children arrive, and it's their first class. Then we cut to Feyre finishing up her first class. Rhys is waiting for her when she's done. She's completely covered in paint, and Rhys is like, rough day at the office, and Feyre goes, you should see Rhysina. Apparently a child had used their powers to like make a giant bubble of paint that had burst and covered all of them, and Feyre explains they like don't really prompt the children, they just like allow them to paint what comes to them. And like this one kid was like, he wanted a puppy for Solstice and didn't get one, and he was like painting about that, but like there's this painting that's sitting there that is like clearly a depiction of the attack that had happened on Velaris, and it's like kind of horrific to see from this like child's perspective. And Feyre had asked the little girl who painted it like what she wanted to do with the painting, and the little girl told her to throw it away because she wanted to like, she didn't want to hold on to this memory. But Feyre's like, I want to keep this as a reminder in our office about like what war, like the cost of war. And on one hand, I do think this is really beautiful, and like perhaps we should like do this for all governing officials. They all have to have like children depicting the like consequences of the choices they make hanging on their walls. I think that might be a good idea. But also like this kid asked you to throw it away, and I do think it's a little disrespectful not to like respect those wishes and like honor them by like doing what they've asked with their art. But regardless, she's gonna hang in the office. Then they head out, they're walking around, they're taking a little break. Feyre is going to come back for the next class. Since these are the first classes, they want Rhysina and Feyre to both be there to kind of help lead them, even though in the future only one of them will be there at a time. And she's just like walking with Rhys, and she's thinking about how much her life has changed over the last year and how happy she is to like be here with her husband and how grateful she is to have him. And she thinks and says to her, and then Rhys, it like says to her mentally, to the stars who listen, Feyre. And then Feyre responds, to the dreams that are answered, Rhys. And that's where we end the Christmas book. This was like truly like the appetizer for A Court of Silver Flames. I'm so excited to jump into Court of Silver Flames. It's my second favorite book in the series. I'm an ACOTAR girl, but I love Silver Flames so much because I'm such a Nesta girl. I'm so excited to chat about my girly Nesta and Cassian. Will I cry? Probably so much. You'll be sick of me. But I'm excited about that. That will be coming very, very soon. I'm excited to jump into that and be done with ACOTAR for the time being, which is crazy, but I'm excited about it. Okay, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you want to know when the Silver Flames videos are dropping, obviously subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.